Fred Bosch sat alone in his home office in their Buckhead, Atlanta townhouse, the glow of his laptop illuminating his angular features and sandy blonde hair. At 34, the tech entrepreneur had built a successful cybersecurity consulting firm from scratch, transforming a college dorm room idea into a seven-figure enterprise that served Fortune 500 companies. His marriage to Marina, a stunning 31-year-old African-American woman with flawless dark skin and expressive almond eyes, had seemed like the culmination of everything he'd worked toward, a beautiful partnership to match his professional success. But tonight, doubt gnawed at him like a persistent ache. Fred scrolled through their joint credit card statements, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Marina's spending had accelerated dramatically over the past 6 months. $3,400 at Neiman Marcus, $2,100 for a spa weekend in Savannah, $5,600 for what she'd called essential handbag purchases. When he gently mentioned scaling back, she'd laughed it off with a dismissive wave, saying, "Fred, darling, you work so hard for us to enjoy life. What's the point of all that money sitting in accounts?" He remembered their engagement 2 years ago, a proposal at sunset on Tybee Island that Marina had orchestrated through carefully dropped hints about her dream location. He'd rented the entire beachfront section, hired a photographer, and presented her with a custom-designed 3-carat diamond ring that cost more than his first car. Her tears had seemed genuine, her embrace fierce and loving. "You're everything I've ever wanted," she'd whispered against his chest. But recently something had shifted. When Fred's company faced a challenging quarter and he'd worked 16-hour days to secure new contracts, Marina had grown distant and irritable. "You're always working," she'd complained over dinner at their favorite steakhouse, barely touching her $40 filet. "When are we going to actually live?" She'd spent that evening texting someone, her lips curving into small smiles Fred hadn't inspired in months. The breaking point came 3 days earlier, on Thursday evening. Fred had casually mentioned exploring opportunities in nonprofit cybersecurity work, something meaningful that might pay less but offer greater purpose. Marina's face had frozen mid-sip of her Chardonnay. "Nonprofit?" she'd repeated slowly, setting down her glass with deliberate care. "Fred, we have plans. The lake house we talked about, the European vacation, my cousin's wedding in Dubai. You're joking, right?" "I'm just thinking out loud," he'd said carefully. "Well, think more realistically," Marina had snapped, her warm brown eyes suddenly cold. "I didn't marry you to become some struggling do-gooder's wife." The words had hung between them like shattered glass. Now Fred made a decision that both terrified and emboldened him. He would test her, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He needed to know if Marina loved Fred Bosch the man or Fred Bosch the meal ticket. The plan required meticulous execution. Fred began by confiding in his business partner and oldest friend, Marcus Chen, a sharp-minded operations director who understood Fred's concerns immediately. "If you're going to do this," Marcus had said over coffee at their favorite Midtown cafe, "you need to commit completely. Half measures won't reveal anything." Together, they crafted a believable narrative of financial collapse. Fred created falsified documents showing catastrophic investment losses, fictitious cryptocurrency ventures that had supposedly tanked, bad real estate deals, and a major client lawsuit threatening the company. He practiced looking stressed, let his appearance slip slightly, and began making increasingly worried phone calls within Marina's earshot about liquidity problems and asset freezes. Marcus helped spread carefully calibrated rumors through their social circle. Just expressing concern about Fred's business situation, he'd mentioned to mutual friends at a gallery opening. Hope everything works out for them. The gossip network in their affluent Atlanta circles worked exactly as Fred anticipated. Within days, the whispers had reached Marina through multiple channels. Fred arrived home to find Marina waiting in the living room, her designer outfit immaculate, her expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I've been hearing things, Fred, about the company, about our finances." This was the moment. Fred sat heavily on the leather sofa they'd bought just 6 months earlier, $8,000 Marina had insisted they needed for proper entertaining. "It's bad, Marina," he said, his voice deliberately flat. "The lawsuit is real. We're looking at losing 70% of the business value. The investments I made last year, they've collapsed. We might have to sell the house, liquidate everything. Marina's flawless face registered shock, then something else, something that looked uncomfortably like calculation. How bad is bad? She asked slowly. We'll be okay. We won't be destitute. But the luxury, it's over for a while. Maybe a long while. I'm talking moving to a modest apartment, cutting expenses to essentials, rebuilding from near scratch. Fred watched her carefully, searching for the wife who'd promised to love him through anything. Instead, he saw Marina's jaw clench almost imperceptibly. I see, she said quietly. This is a lot to process, Fred. I need some air. She grabbed her Prada bag and left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floors. If you enjoy stories of shocking betrayals, hidden secrets, gold diggers, and justice served cold, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new stories here every day, each one more intense than the last one. And tell me where you are watching from. Marina's transformation was swift and brutal. She'd spent the night at her sister's house, something she'd never done before without explanation. When she returned the next morning, her warmth had evaporated entirely. She moved through their home like a stranger evaluating property, her eyes distant and calculating. I'm going to stay with Vanessa for a while, she announced over the coffee Fred had made, not meeting his eyes. You need to figure out this mess, and I need space to think about what this means for us. Marina, we can work through this together, Fred said, genuinely curious how far she'd take this. Marriage means partnership. Fred, she interrupted sharply, finally looking at him with barely concealed contempt. And partners don't drag each other down into financial ruin because of stupid business decisions. I have to protect myself. The words landed like physical blows. Fred had anticipated disappointment, perhaps fear, but this cold calculation was something else entirely. Protect yourself from what? From me? Marina's laugh was bitter and dismissive. From being trapped in a life I never signed up for. I'll be in touch about logistics. She walked out, rolling a designer suitcase Fred had bought her for their anniversary. Over the next several days, Fred's surveillance, aided by Marcus's tech expertise and their shared access to Marina's cloud accounts through the family plan she'd forgotten about, revealed the devastating truth. Text messages to someone named D told the complete story. The money's gone. He's basically broke. I can't do this. I know, baby. Come stay with me. You deserve better than some failed entrepreneur. I'm already planning my exit. God, I should have seen this coming. He was always too focused on meaningful work instead of making real money. You've given him enough time. You're too beautiful, too special to waste on someone who can't provide. Further digging revealed D was Derek Whitmore, a commercial real estate developer Marina had met at a charity gala 3 months earlier, one of the many expensive events she'd insisted they attend. The affair had been progressing steadily, waiting only for the right moment. Fred's financial collapse had provided the perfect excuse. The betrayal cut deeper than Fred had imagined possible. He'd expected some mercenary instinct, but seeing the casual cruelty in those messages, the complete absence of any genuine affection or loyalty, was its own revelation. Marina hadn't just failed his test. She'd exposed herself as someone Fred had never truly known. Fred arranged the confrontation with the precision of a military operation. He'd invited Marina back to discuss settlement terms and dividing assets. Language that brought her promptly to their home, probably eager to secure whatever remained of his wealth. What she didn't know was that Fred had also invited their closest friends and family to what he'd told them was an important announcement dinner. When Marina arrived dressed impeccably in a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, she found their living room filled with 20 people. Her parents, her sister Vanessa, Fred's parents, Marcus, and various friends from their social circle. Her face went pale beneath her makeup. "Fred, what is this?" she asked carefully, her voice strained. Fred stood, his posture calm but his blue eyes hard as flint. "This is the truth, Marina. Everyone here deserves to hear it. He pulled out his laptop, connected it to their large television, and displayed the text message conversations for everyone to see. The room went deathly silent as people read Marina's cruel dismissals, her affair planning, her mercenary calculations. "Fred, you're taking this out of context," Marina stammered, her composure cracking. "This isn't... You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Fred said quietly. "I staged my financial collapse, Marina. Every bit of it. The company is fine. The investments are secure. I'm not broke. I never was. But I needed to know if you loved me, or if you loved what I could buy you." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Now everyone knows the answer." Marina's mother gasped audibly. Her sister Vanessa's face crumpled with disappointment. Marina herself looked around the room wildly, seeking an ally, finding only stunned faces and averted eyes. "You manipulated me!" Marina finally shrieked, grasping for any defense. "You lied to me! This whole thing is entrapment!" "I created a scenario," Fred corrected calmly. "You chose how to respond. You chose to abandon me, to betray me, to plan your exit with another man the moment things got difficult. Those were your choices, Marina. Your character." Marina's attempts at explanation dissolved into tears. But they struck Fred as performative, the desperate weeping of someone caught rather than someone genuinely remorseful. She left within minutes, her parents trailing behind her in shocked silence, the evening ending in a way no one had anticipated. 2 weeks later, Fred sat in a riverside park near downtown Atlanta, watching families enjoy the spring morning. The divorce papers were filed. The prenuptial agreement Marcus had wisely insisted Fred include making the separation financially straightforward. Marina had hired an aggressive attorney, but the documented infidelity in the ironclad prenup left her with little leverage. The pain was real. Fred had loved the woman he thought Marina was, and grieving that illusion hurt deeply. But underneath the pain was something else, profound relief and hard-won wisdom. He'd learned that character revealed itself not in comfort, but in crisis, that true partnership meant standing together when things fell apart, and that the most expensive mistake he could have made would have been discovering Marina's true nature after children, after decades of deeper entanglement. Marcus joined him on the bench, carrying 2 coffees. "How are you holding up?" his friend asked. "Better than I expected," Fred admitted. "It's strange. I feel more betrayed by who she wasn't than by what she did. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. You grieved a person who never existed." Marcus sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "For what it's worth, you handled it with more grace than most would have. You gave her every chance to prove you wrong." Fred nodded slowly. The test had been brutal, but necessary. He'd uncovered a painful truth, but truth, however harsh, was better than building a life on comfortable lies. As he watched the sun sparkle on the Chattahoochee River, Fred felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Genuine hope for a future built on authenticity rather than pretense, on real connection rather than transactional relationships. The expensive lesson had taught him that the most valuable things in life, integrity, loyalty, genuine love, couldn't be bought or faked. They could only be discovered through the kind of tests that revealed who people truly were when the facade fell away. Fred had passed his test by having the courage to ask the hard questions. Marina had failed hers by showing exactly who she'd been all along. Moving forward, Fred knew he'd be wiser, more cautious, but also more open to finding something real. The dream life he'd thought he had with Marina had been just that, a dream, beautiful, but ultimately hollow. Now finally awake, he could begin building something solid, something true, something that would survive not just prosperity, but the inevitable storms that tested every relationship's foundation. The next chapter of his life would be written more carefully, with eyes wide open and a heart that had learned the difference between what glittered and what was genuinely gold.